Be ready for the dictation. The dictation is based on the Hindu newspaper editorial. So 3 seconds. Start. The violent standoff between the Assam and Mizoram armed policemen at Warrant in Mizoram on July 26, about 6 kilometers from Lailapur, Assam, which took 6 lives and left over 50 injured, is the culmination of a long standing border dispute, history and boundary almost 1.5 centuries ago and 17 years before the Lushai Hills was annexed to British Assam in 1892. The inner line boundary of the Lushai Hills was fixed in 1875 on the southern border of Assam's Chachar district, in line with the colonial practice of fixing borders. The boundary was, however, not precise, at it was drawn largely using natural markers such as rivers and hills. In post independent India, the Mizoram government has accepted this boundary in preference over the subsequent revisions made by the colonial government when the inner line permit under the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation 1873 was extended to the Lushai Hills district in 1930 and 1933, unlike the 1875 boundary, which involved a proxy of Sukapulala, one of the Lushai chiefs. The Mizoram government perceives that the boundary instituted by these revisions sidestepped them and amounted to unilateral superimposition driven, as it were, by administrative convenience. These revisions are also seen to conspicuously fail to recognize the Mizo's long standing historical rights to use the undemarcated southern border of Chachar as their hunting ground for jhum cultivation and as sites of their resource extraction, including rubber and timber. The enclosure of about 509 square miles of the Lushai Hills under the Inner Line Reserve Forest area via the Assam Forest Regulation 1877 is being cited as one of the glaring exemplars of encroachment by the Assam government into the Lushai Hills, now Mizoram. However, considering that borders cannot be driven by perception but by institutionalized rules and laws, Assam's government continues to refuse to accept Mizoram's standpoint. Assam's stand. Seen from this standpoint, The Assam government consider Mizo plantation and settlements in the inner line reserved forest areas as an encroachment. Such a standpoint is oblivious to the fact that Sipui, a Lushai chief, established a village, Seetpur, on a hill nearly 10 miles from Silchar, the capital of Chachar. The Jalenga tea estate located in Tlangpui village and Paloi tea estate near Verest, both in Chachar. Their names after Jalenga and Palavia, two Lushai chiefs, given that the Lushai, also known as Old Cookies, Ragwal, Bait, Ralte, etc., are among the earliest settlers of Chachar. Many villages in Chachar and Karimganj have Lushai settlements. Sporadic incidents of evictions or arrest by the Assam officials were reported at the in the 1970s and 2000s. A recent allegation of encroachment happened in October 2020 when Assamese officials burned down Mizo huts and other settlements in the Singla Reserve Forest, which led to border clashes and a 20-day blockade of National Highway 306. Although Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma is partially right in claiming that the dispute is about reserve forest and not land. What is at the heart of this dispute is the contending approaches of the Assam and Mizoram governments to borders, namely state centering and people centering approaches. Mr. Sharma and the Assam government represent a continuum of the colonial state centric approach to borders, which gives premium to legal jurisdiction and administrative recognition and protection of the border. Colonial state making and state expansion entail a fixing of borders, the discovery of oil, tea, rubber, and coal around the middle of the 19th century in the outer limits of Assam proper, and the concomitant attempt to commercialize these commodities impel the regulation of trade and commerce between the British and their competitors. The enclosures of land in these outer limits by declaring them either as forest reserved areas or imposing an inner line permit Raj system stem from this. This development leverages a new land use regime which is principally driven by efforts to augment state revenues, forest conservation, and the protection of tribal indigenous land interests are peripheral concerns. One of the unintended consequences was the large scale migration of labor from various parts of British India into Chachar, Hailakandi, and Karimganj. The encroachment and enclosure of their land and forest commons reinforced the steely resolve of the tribal group such as the Luciais to protect their land. Stop writing.